After the first two rounds of the 2026 season, McLaren have had fewer racing laps than the struggling and vibrating Aston Martins. They've scored nearly the fewest points of any defending championship team in over a decade. And as a team, they're only 1 point ahead of Haas's Ali Behrman, averaging over half a second behind Mercedes in qualifying, and they just had a double did not start in China. So how has McLaren gone from being the class leaders in 2025 to not even being able to start races in 2026? McLaren's issues aren't simple. There isn't just one thing going wrong. It's multiple problems that all feed into each other. And those issues really fall into two main categories: the chassis and the power unit. First, talking on the chassis, we do have to give McLaren some credit here because their communication has been very honest. They haven't blamed Mercedes for the power unit struggles that they've been having, like we saw from them during the Honda era. Part of that is because the Mercedes engine is currently the best on the grid, but even still, they've owned the fact that the shortcomings are really on them. Andrea Stella said it clearly: we need to find a way to extract more out of the power unit, and on the other side, develop the car. And right now, the car just isn't producing enough aerodynamic load, aka it's not producing enough downforce. It's not a fundamentally broken car, it's a car with a solid base, but it's underdeveloped. McLaren don't believe they need to go back to the drawing board. They believe they just need to accelerate the development. But there are definitely some underlying concerns. One key difference compared to teams like Mercedes is that McLaren appear to be running a shorter wheelbase. That could help with weight and agility, but it could also potentially limit the downforce that is available on the car. If their concept is correct, that is manageable. But if it's wrong and they need to rethink core elements of their package like the wheelbase, then you're suddenly talking about 2027, not 2026. Another interesting carryover that we've seen on the McLarens from 2025 is tire graining. Norris mentioned that it's still an issue despite going into a completely new rule set, and that was already a weakness for McLaren and particularly for Norris last year. It's not the biggest problem that they're facing right now, but over a full season, it could become a limiting factor. Where things start to connect is that the chassis issues aren't isolated. They also impact the power unit performance. An underdeveloped chassis means less energy can be harvested, which means less deployment on the straights and ultimately worse overall performance. So the overall takeaway with this chassis is this: it's not a bad car, it's just not a good one. Next, we obviously have to talk about the power unit side of things for McLaren because that's obviously been a big problem for them in these two first races of the season. Things are a little weird for McLaren right now. They're really the only Mercedes customer team having this level of issues with the power unit. The Mercedes engine is clearly strong, we're seeing that with the works team, but it's also not as bulletproof as the Ferrari power unit, and McLaren are feeling that more than anyone. In Australia, reliability wasn't a complete disaster, but it still limited Norris's running. And that lack of running only makes it harder to understand and optimize the new power unit. Because right now, McLaren simply aren't extracting the performance that Mercedes are. The works team have clearly figured out how to optimize the full package, and McLaren haven't. Oscar Piastri's did not start when he crashed on the way to the grid, also didn't help anything because then they continued to lack even more running, which they desperately need. Then came China, and things somehow got even worse for them. The overall performance issues were still there. They did make some improvements, but reliability became the real story. McLaren had a double did not start for both of their drivers, which is almost unheard of in recent times in Formula One. From what's been reported, there was a power unit issue and not something directly in McLaren's control. And even more unusual is that it was two separate failures on the same component across both cars. McLaren worked closely with Mercedes HPP to find a solution, but they couldn't resolve it in time. Now, yes, that specific failure might not be McLaren's fault, but the overall situation still reflects poorly on them. Because regardless of where the blame lies, the results are what matter, and those results have been extremely poor. So how has McLaren fallen this quickly from the heights of a double championship in 2025 to now being able to barely start races in 2026? It's not just bad luck. It's a combination of an underdeveloped chassis, poor power unit optimization, limited running, and then compounded by reliability issues. All of these stack on top of each other, and when you put all of that together, you get a team that simply isn't competitive enough right now. All in all, Norris summed it up best. He said both our car and our understanding of the power unit needs to improve, and that's exactly where McLaren are. The reigning champions should not be finishing 50 seconds off the lead in race 1 and then not even starting race 2. Unfortunately for them, no matter how well they develop the car from here, the damage may already be done for 2026. Because while McLaren will almost certainly recover to a more respectable level over the course of the season, the 2026 championship is already slipping away. So what do you think of McLaren's season thus far? Do you think they can still mount a championship fight by the end of the year, similar to what they did in 2024, or is it going to be too steep of a hill to climb? Let me know down in the comments below. While you're there, give the video a like and hit that subscribe button. My name's Michael, thank you for tuning in to Last to First, and I'll see you in the next one.